The Venator Star Destroyer is a battle carrier. I'm John555, this is the Jedi Ranger, and let's talk about that. First, I want to lay some groundwork. About 2 weeks ago, maybe a bit longer, there was a post on one of the Star Wars subreddits, I unfortunately forget which one, that was talking about how the Venator was actually a bad ship. And I'm like, no, but you're not wrong either, so yes and no. My main argument was that the Venator was used in a role it was not designed for. The Venator was used in the same role that the Imperials would later use this Imperial Star Destroyer as. So the idea is it's both your battleship and your main carrier, which in sci-fi I do think that concept where every ship has some kind of carrying capabilities is much more reasonable than in real life. But the Imperial Star Destroyer is more heavily armed and more heavily armored compared to the Venator. But it sacrifices that by being bigger, which is okay because it's a heavy hitter designed to take a hit and ditch a hit, but also by having reduced starfighter capabilities and facilities. But does the Imperial need that? Not as much. They're not fighting a pitched battle per se like the Republic was, and most importantly, a Imperial class Star Destroyer can still carry 4 squadrons of TIE fighters or 4 squadrons of really any TIE series starfighter, and probably you could squeeze a bit more. TIEs are also easily replaceable, and you can use some other ships to supplement actual carriers, though we don't see them too often, but add in 2 Quasar class carriers and boom, you got some, and a couple Star Destroyers, and you got a pretty sizable starfighter complement. So the Imperial Star Destroyer did what the Venator was used for. It could hit heavy and still bring a sizable starfighter complement to battle, but it wasn't a dedicated battle carrier or carrier. It was still a battleship or a ship of the line first and foremost. The Venator, in my opinion, should never have been the ship of the line, the main ship of the Republic Navy. That should have been the Victory class Star Destroyer. It has more heavy armor, it has more heavy weaponry, it can take a hit and dish a hit. The Venator can dish a hit, it can dish out starfighter hits especially, but the Venator, as we can see, is not really the best at taking a hit, though it can definitely take a hit better than other ships. But I called it a battle carrier. What do I mean by that? Well, first I want to talk about battle cruisers. A battle cruiser is basically a ship. There's lots of different definitions, but the one I like is it can outgun anything it can't outrun, and it can outrun anything it can't outgun. So basically, it can dish a hit when it can't run away, and it can run away when it can't dish a hit. Basically the weapons of a battleship, but the speed and armor of a cruiser. Of course, politics will always play a role, and sometimes fast battleships may be classified as a battle cruiser. Sometimes a ship may be classified as a battle cruiser because they didn't like using the term battleship. There's a lot of different reasons. We even saw this with carriers. The Japanese Maritime Self-Defense Force helicopter carrying destroyers. They're not aircraft carriers. No, they're destroyers. They just carry some aircraft. Meanwhile, the current Japanese Maritime Self-Defense Force ship Kanji, I'm apologize for my Japanese pronunciation, but it's named for the World War II aircraft carrier of the same name, and it's bigger than it. It actually has a higher carrying capacity, but it's not an aircraft carrier. Oh, the Soviet Union, they didn't have aircraft carriers. No, they had missile cruisers that carried aircraft. That was mainly because of the Bosphorus, but they were aircraft carriers that just had some VRS missile tubes strapped on, so they could claim missile carrier instead of aircraft carrier. Again, politics at work. So the Venator was a Star Destroyer because Quad Drive Yards designed it and said it was, so that's the politics in universe. But going back to everything I said about that, what makes me say that the Venator is a battle carrier? Well, that's because I don't think a battle carrier is a combination of a carrier and battleship. I think those are two specializations that you do not want to combine because you'll get all the weaknesses of a carrier and none of the strengths of a battleship except for heavy hitters, and you just designed a battle carrier because it's more like a cruiser. A battle carrier can outgun anything it can't outrun, and it can launch fighters for anything it can't outgun. No, seriously. If it can outrun something, it should. If it can outgun something, it can. And if it can't, it's launching its starfighters. Or aircraft, if you're actually designing that in the real world, though. Not as I think applicable in the real world. There are actual people who understand this stuff better than me can comment on that. But I think in sci-fi, in Star Wars in particular, yes, a battle carrier is, I think, a viable ship type, but it should not be your main ship. It can still be your most numerous ship, but it should never be the spearhead, the front of any fleet formation. Maybe for some fancy parades, but in going to combat, your victories, your heavy armored ships should go first, and then your carriers, whether they're dedicated carriers or battle carriers, should come in second. And both ships should be protected by screens, screening for starfighters, screening for other screens. The idea is you don't want your big ships to take the hit, even if they can. You don't want it. You want them to be able to dish it out and not take it at all. You know, the best way to save the ship is not to get hit, and you should have smaller, less expensive ships, both screens and starfighters, to do that for you. So, the Venator is a battle carrier, and that's because it has heavier armament than a regular carrier, so it can do more battleship and battle cruiser, and even like heavy cruiser if we're using some older terminology stuff going on. It can dish that hit when it has to. So that makes me think the Venator's best purpose is that second line in a battle. So it's there in case something bad happens to the victories, which should have been the main ship in my opinion. But it's not designed to actually dish a hit unless absolutely necessary, but carry starfighters into combat, into battle, and use its facilities to repair them and refuel them and rearm them, re-equip them for the battle. So they're not supposed to be taking the hit. They're supposed to be staying back. They should be on escort duties when you want some ships that can dish a hit, but you don't want to send your main battleship onto those duties. You want ships that can better keep up with what's being escorted. So there's that. But also too, locations that need to have some heavier ships for defense, but you don't want to allocate a full-on battleship because of the resources. Event could be really good. You can have a starfighter squadron shipbound or couple. You can have a decently sized ship with some decent armor and firepower capabilities, enough to deter most raiders in that. That's what the Venator is, but that's not how the Venator was used. But it was used for those roles because it was the only captured ship in the Republic Navy during the Clone Wars. Yes, technically the Victory did exist, but we never saw it in canon, not in the Clone Wars TV show at least. Maybe in reference in a comic or a book. There's more references in media in Legends, but still, it was barely used. The Imperator class Star Destroyer, which was later redubbed the Imperial, was also introduced at the end of the Clone Wars to actually replace the true role, the role that they used the Venator as. And there was other ships that existed, but we never saw them. The Venator was the main ship of the Republic Navy, and it was a good ship, but it was not used in accordance with its design. And the only reason why it did so well in those pitched battles was because the Republic Navy, the clone starfighter pilots, and any others. So the Republic Starfighter Corps, led by the Jedi, were really good. The starfighters were able to disable a lot of the CAS captured ships. They were heavy hitters. Were able to very well screen from the destroyed starfighters to prevent them from damaging the Venators. You had good leadership and good pilots. And if one of those was missing, I'm not sure the Venator would have been as successful as it was. So the Venator was a good ship. It would have filled, I think, the roles it was designed for very well. But it was given a role it was never designed to fill, except in an absolute emergency. And because of that, it has a glaring weakness. So, in all honesty, the Empire should have kept the Venator around to be what the Venator was supposed to be, and have the Star Destroyer as the heavy hitters. But the Venator could not inspire fear the way the Imperial Star Destroyer could. But those are just my thoughts. I would love to hear your thoughts in the comment section down below. Thank you for watching my video. I do hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please be sure to give this video a like and share. Also, consider subscribing to my channel to stay up to date on all my latest content. In the meantime, thank you for watching, and as always, have a good day, a good night, wherever you are. May the Force be with you always.